The TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by Tenon Controls. And by HDA ModelWorks, suppliers of scale model lighting products, detail parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today. Well, here we are again with more progress on our Klingon K'tinga build. This is the 1/350 scale Polar Lights kit, and this is part 4 of our video build series. Boyd here with you, and welcome back, everybody. Well, I've been making really good progress on the model. As you can see, our last video we showed you the whole forward section of the model is pretty much complete, so I'm moving on now to the rear half of the ship. And when we get into that area here, we've got to assemble the upper and lower halves and all that. But before I do all that, I want to go ahead and get all my paint work done here on the top and the bottom. And as I talked about in the first couple of parts of this video, all the paint work that I did here on the forward section, the panels were small enough and the detail was raised enough that I was able to just go in there and paint it all on by hand. And that all worked out really nice. I didn't have any issues at all. I just put on my magnifying specs and got down on there nice and close, and we had those come out really good. We painted all that with the craft acrylic paints. And thinking about the rear half of the ship here, I started taking a look at it, and you could paint some of the panels on here by hand because the detail is raised enough so you have a nice clear defined line that you can follow as a guide. But a lot of this paint detail that needs to go on here is on some of these areas where they're almost perfectly flat. There's a little line there to show you where it should be, but it's not a sharp enough of a line where I would feel confident going on there with a brush and painting it and getting really crisp, clean lines. So for doing the main part here, I've gone back and started just using regular masking tape to do this and airbrushing this stuff on. Again, using the craft acrylic paints because it sprays as good as it just works good all around. You can spray it or brush it and it comes out really nice. I'm thinning it down with a little bit of windshield washer fluid, which has a little bit of alcohol in it. You can also just thin it with straight up water and it'll be just fine. But for this purpose here, I'll explain, because windshield washer fluid has a little bit of alcohol in it, it'll help it dry faster. So what I'm doing here is to make this go along at a pretty good pace, I'm using my heat gun too, so whenever I spray a little panel on here, I can dry it really quick with my heat gun, and then I can paint on the adjacent panel right next to it. Even if my tape touches over top of the one that I just sprayed, it won't ruin the paint or peel it off or anything like that because it's already dry with a quick go over with the heat gun. And it's because it has that alcohol in it that it dries up really fast. It'll dry fairly fast and just regular air drying if you want to do it that way. But you can either use a heat gun or you can use a hair dryer. Just put it on really low setting and just kind of go over it. So I'll give you a close-up look of this area I've already done over here, and just kind of hold up the picture you can see of the studio or the finished model on the box artwork here, and you can see that I've gone ahead and matched up these colors. Like I said, I mixed my own colors. Some of you might be writing in asking, specifically what color you used. I can't really tell you because I just mixed these up custom according to my eye. Now they're all based off of shades of green, so I basically just went up or down on the green with some white added to it. So in other words, this regular darker green color that I started with, I just went up in shade and white a little bit to get this little lighter, it almost looks yellow, but it's actually white. These kind of highlight panels right here. And for this mid color here, this kind of more aqua looking green, I did have to put a couple of drops of blue in that to get that to look more of a bluish green than this sort of more olive green that we see over here. But just, you know, using those craft paints, it's really inexpensive to play around because, like I said, the bottles are about $1 a piece. So I basically put it in a little Dixie cup like this, and we'll put a little bit of paint in there. You know, start off with enough of the base color, which will be, you know, this kind of shade of green here that you can buy that was pretty close to what looked like the color I wanted to use. They have, you know, if you go over to Hobby Lobby or even Walmart, they have a massive aisle of these paints where you have, like, there's probably, in green alone, there's probably 20 different colors. I mean, 20 different colors of red, believe it or not. They have all the colors there. And like I said, so they're inexpensive, $1.50 a bottle. So I'll buy, you know, multiple colors and all that and use them. So I'll pour a little bit in my cup here, and then I'll just kind of stir it up, and then I'll start putting in my other color. Like for the green, I went with a little bit of white to get it to come up a little bit, and I'll just keep doing that until I get it to where I like it. And just kept referring to that painter's guide that comes on the box, and finally came up with the colors that I wanted. So that's up to the your own individual eye. To the color that I think looks good, you're probably not going to think looks good, or it's a little bit off to you. So in the end, the best thing I can say about all that is just go with what you think looks good on your own model, because the debate on how this should be painted is endless, and it's almost kind of pointless, like I said, because they did it so many different ways, and there aren't any really super clear pictures of this thing with modern you know, photography that would show it in clear detail. All the pictures that are available are really old pictures from the 70s, because after that they changed the model and they used it for Star Trek 6. It got completely repainted. I'm sure they repainted it several times during the shooting of the original movie itself, doing touch-ups on it and things like that. So just kind of go with what you think looks good. But let's get into the continuing the painting of this now, and I wanted to show you guys how I'm doing this. This is a hand masking method, and I'm going to pop you in a little bit closer here, and we're going to start working on this this side over here where I've left this alone so I can show you guys how to do, you know, the rest of this part. And so I do this in steps. So what I wanted to show you first is we're just going to go ahead and spray in some of these kind of aqua green colors on here. These panels are raised, and you can see them pretty clear, and I'm using this paint guide and also the work that I've already done over on this side, because it's totally symmetrical. It's not random. Everything that's on this side, you just can flip-flop and put it over here and make it exactly the same. So now that I have this laid down following the guide on the box art, I know where to go with the rest of this stuff. So I'm just going to pick out a panel here, and let's start off with one that's towards the front. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and lay some tape across the front end of my bulkhead here so we don't get any overspray on the forward panels that are already finished. And I had masked this off before when I was doing this work on the other side. And this will just take me a second. Don't have to be really pretty with the masking there, just getting it covered up basically from any kind of overspray. And you can see my airbrush is or hear my airbrush idling over there. It's ready to go. It wants to get busy, so we'll get after it here in just a second. Get some of this masked off, and we'll be ready to go here. Okay, so going up to this area that we're dealing with right now, I'm going to start off with, let's just pick one here. We've got one right up here next to this kind of rise right here, and I'll just go ahead and put some masking tape down on that. I can clearly see that line where it's supposed to go, and so I'm just putting it on here and getting it stuck down on there real good. Go over it a couple times with your finger so you make sure you seal that edge really good. And then another one going on like that. There's another line right here. Looks like that goes all the way across, which it does. And then it stops right there on that edge, so I'm going to go ahead and put a piece right there. Okay, so we've got that one masked off by itself now. Now there's a little bit more to this shape that you can see, you know, versus the other side here, and we're going to go ahead and go on the other side of it like that a little bit too. But we're just going to focus on one section at a time. So let me go ahead and spray this down. Just use a nice even spray. Not too much paint, just let it kind of flow on there. I'm spraying at lower pressure. I'm spraying it around 30 psi. Normally you spray around 40 or so with an airbrush. That way I don't blast a lot of paint out of there, and it's also going to help you to not leak around the edges of your paint seal or your masking seal, because you're not like blasting paint, you know, really hard on it and forcing it up underneath of there. Always try to spray, you know, straight down at your mask too. Don't spray it at, you know, towards the side or anything like that, and you'll have less problems with paint leaking. So here we go with the heat gun. Just a quick little go over like that on low heat, and we can pull these pieces of tape off. I've got my little tweezers here to help me grab these. And you can reuse, if you're careful, you can reuse these pieces of tape several times too. So there we have that panel there painted, and you can see it looks really good. Now we're going to come over here to the other side. There's a little bit of detail that goes on there. Looks like they come across like this. You cross-reference that to the other side there. It's got a spot right here. I'm going to come over to the edge and mask that off first. And then we've got this line right here. Like I said, the great part about this model kit is that the detail is raised there just enough where you can see exactly where, you know, when you line up your masking tape here, you can definitely see where everything's supposed to go. Now we've got one that comes across like this, just on the edge of that raised part. I want to make sure I get right on the edge of that. Okay. Again, just checking what it looks like on the other side here. Looks like that little corner part is covered up, so we're going to go ahead and hit that just like it is. Just a little dust, just like that. Okay, those of you who have watched my channel for a long time, you've seen me do this before on the Enterprise refit and several other models that I've done. This method works really good for me, and that was using my own solvent-based paints most of the time. You know, they're Speedsecker paints, which are solvent-based, but this Hobbycraft paint works really good, like I said, for doing this, because it dries really fast using that additive in there, the windshield washer fluid, so I can come across. You can see I'll stick the tape right on these pieces that I already did, and they're not, you know, it's not disturbing that paint at all. It's already dry. So let's go on now, and we've got this long strip that comes down here that goes just on the outside edge of this detail right here. So let me mask these off. I'm going to throw this stuff away. Like I said, $3 for a roll of tape. I can afford to use a little bit of tape. And let's mask this off. It kind of comes down like this. And I'm going to show you on this one in particular how you're probably already asking, how do you make the turns and everything? So I'm just going to go like this. I'm going to go ahead and mask this one section, and I'm cutting it off. I'm just going to be painting one section of it to start with. Okay, I'm not worried about the whole thing yet. Now this comes into another thing that you could do. There's another method you could use here. You could put this mask on here, and you could start rubbing it. You could take like a piece of, a piece of wood or whatever, and you could come on here and start rubbing it and getting it what they call burnished, where it's down on there and you can clearly see these edges and everything. And then come back with a knife, like a really sharp, hobby knife, and cut the edges away and leave just the mask. But I really don't think I would do it that way, because I think what would happen here is that you're going to see cut marks in the paint. From far away it'll probably look all right, but if you get up really close to it and look at it, you're probably going to see those cut marks, because I've got 2 coats of primer on here, and I've got the base color, and so the paint's kind of thick, and when you cut into that, you're going to see that little line right there. So I don't really recommend doing that way, even though you can do it that way. But we'll just see how that, we'll leave that debate up for others to worry about. But let's go ahead and keep on going here so I can explain. Let me mask off this previous area that I already did so we don't spray over that again. So we got this one little stripe coming down here, and let's hit that. Okay, and then we can dry it real quick. All right, now is where the part comes in that makes a little bit, a little bit of a difference as far as how long this will take and how easy it is. You can see that if I hold this a little closer for you, we've still got to come around here and go back up to complete this shape. So you'd say, okay, well, you got to mask that all at once. Well, you don't have to. You can do it just like this. So we're going to come back now, and we're going to put a mask down there on the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to come across and do this one over here. And then we're going to mask off the flat part of the bottom there where it's making that turn. Alright, and then I'm going to put some more back over top of where we already painted. Actually, I'm going to leave that open on the, I'm going to go on the far edge of it. I take that back. We want that to blend in. So I just masked off the outside part of it that we don't want painted that color, and we've got that area open there. So I'll spray this on, making sure I put it on nice and even, and that way your colors are going to match where you blend in. That's the important part. Make sure you put enough paint each time. Don't try to go too light on the paint. You don't want to flood it, but you don't want to be too light, or the color won't match when you blend from one panel to the next. Okay, so it may take you a couple of times to get the hang of that, but it's no big deal. If you pull the mask off and you see that it doesn't quite match, just go back over it again. So, but after a while you won't have to do that anymore. Now you can see that I'm out of the picture here. Where am I at? Get my finger on it. Yeah, you can see right there that where we blended that in, you can't see where I did that at all. It looks exactly the same. So you can go ahead and do that on the entire surface without a problem. So let's finish off this stripe then. Come up here and put a line right there. And we're going to come across the top like this. Alright. And then down here, got to get in the right amount of light here so I can see. That's the thing, you want to be able to see really clearly. I'm shooting this over here because it's easier to shoot right here, but I should have a little bit better light here, but I'm seeing good enough. But make sure you have plenty of light when you're doing this so you can see. Alright, so we've got that on there now, and we're ready to hit that little stripe. Let's come back and do that one. Again, I'm blending it down to where I already painted, over the top of it. And no, you can't see a little line there or anything. This paint is so thin that it doesn't make a huge edge, on your masks. Okay, just drying it again. Pull this up. And we'll show this to you. Get my finger on it so I can guide myself on the camera again. And I'll try to get this as close as I can. It looks really clean, guys, like perfectly crisp and clean. You can't see any problem with that at all. And then, even if you do have a tiny little bit of difference, which we don't, but if you did have a tiny little bit of difference where there was a little bit of an edge or something on there, when you seal coat this, which I'm going to do at the very end, I'll use some dull sealer over the top of all this, you know, clear. That's going to blend everything in, and all that'll disappear anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. But we don't have that issue even starting off here. It's working really good. So let's go ahead and pick another panel to do, just to give you more of an idea. We've got, let's see, we've got these little triangles right here. I've got that one on there. Let's just see if we can find one here. There's plenty of them to do. Let's do this little guy that comes down here. It's kind of hard to pick out at first because it's kind of like a, it's like one of those puzzles that confuses your eye. But we've got these two here, and this one coming down. That one's done. Got that long triangle next to it. So let's do that one. There's a little tiny triangle right here, and it's got two really thin long lines that come off of that. So that'll be a cool one to show you guys how that one comes out. My light's really sourcey. I'm getting a shadow on this side over here. Okay, so got that on there. I think I have a little leak in my air leak in my airbrush line here. It's shouldn't be running like that. It should. Okay, here we go. Just hitting this one again. Come here on this side a little bit. And you notice I'm keeping it right in the center. I don't have to mask off a huge area right here. Again, spraying at really low pressure. Not getting a bunch of overspray on the whole model. So this is working out really good. Okay, so we've got that little triangle now. I'm going to have to use my tweezers to get this one off. Okay, that little triangle is there, so now it's got these two really thin lines that come off of it that extend down, and then they get a little bit thicker towards the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to need a longer piece here to do that whole thing. So we'll get rid of this stuff. So I'm not doing too good of a job of using it over because I'm doing this a little bit different for you guys, but yeah, normally I'll save that stuff and keep using it over and over. Now this one is a really tiny thin line, so you have to really get up close and be careful on these. But like I said, that line is there, so you can definitely see it. Just do this one little stripe for you. Okay, and it comes down to right there and ends. You can see where the little line where it ends is at. All right. Cap off up here. We don't get any overspray on that. Okay, we'll hit this one. That line is so thin that it, looking at it from here, it almost looks like there's no gap in the tape at all, but there is just enough. I think I'm a little light towards the bottom. Let's put just a tiny little bit more right there. All right. And we'll see how this one looks. And, oops, I keep forgetting I'm zoomed in. Here's our line right here that we just did. And you can see that's really nice and thin and crisp and all that. It gets a little bit wider as it comes down, so I'll just come over with a little bit of tape and widen that out and make that line the rest of the way down. So that's how I do that part, guys. Now, these secondary colors here are, they really, to me, that's when it really starts looking nice. Or I mean, this third color that goes on here, this sort of cucumber, I guess you'd call it a cucumber green. It's, you know, it's a really light green. So we're going to put that little detail on this area right here. So this is another example of how we are going to do that in segments, like I said, instead of trying to do that whole thing at once. So let me pause really quick, and I'll switch the paints, the paint color in my airbrush, and we'll come back and do that for you. Be right back. Okay, everybody, back with you again, and I've switched my colors in my airbrush, and what I'm doing now is I'm working on this little guy right here that has this extra little color going on, this really kind of neat looking shape that they put on here. Looks very 70s, very fitting for this ship. So I've started to do that same method. I've worked my way around here. I've made one, I've actually sprayed 3 sections here as I'm starting to work my way around. I've sprayed that one there, this one, and then this one all separately to make those curves. And so let's go ahead and finish this up and show you. We're going to do this one long section right here, and we're going to again overlap what we already did on the upper part right there. So I'm just going to mask off the surrounding areas that we don't want any paint on. Okay. I'm going to hit this one. Now we're blending again, so this is a lighter color, and it doesn't cover as easy as the darker stuff, so you want to make sure that you go over this one a little bit extra. Not flood it with paint, but just a little bit extra from what you were before. So, you know, we're blending it into that one that existed on there already, so it has to match pretty closely. You can't see where we overlapped it. Okay. Again, a little quick drying time here. And then we'll pull this stuff off. See a couple little black dots on my paint here from where I was doing my weathering with a brush, and we'll go ahead and fix that. And see, I went a little bit too heavy with my paint, so you can see I got a little bit of line there, but not to worry. What we do is we come back and we'll let this dry just a little bit, and I'll mask this again, this top one, and just re-overlap it again, and that'll completely go away. So don't worry if that happens. Like I said, anytime you screw up, just come back with your color that you started with and mask off that adjacent area, and then just redo it, and it'll come out just fine. It may take you a couple of times. Let's just make sure that's good and dry, and then let's do this final little segment right here. Let's start off with some new tape again. And again, this is, you know, just tedious, kind of slow work, but in the end you're going to be really happy you took the time, because the model will look great, all painted up really nice like that. Okay, just make sure I got a nice blend there. I can pull this tape ahead of time, I think, just to check. Yep, that looks good, so let's go ahead and dry it. Give this a nice good drying, and then I'm going to show you guys that we're going to come back and fix that little spot right there where it's not quite matching. Mask this off. Probably going to go through a whole roll of tape by the time I'm done with this, but that's okay. Like I said, the tape was like $3 for the roll. Not bad at all. Okay, go ahead and hit this. Yeah, I got a little bit heavy on that one line, but that's all right. Like I said, when this is thoroughly dry, if I get anything like that and it's too severe, I'll probably take some really fine sandpaper, like 600 grit or something like that, and just scuff it just a tiny little bit with some water, and, you know, knock that little line down that's on there. The main thing I'm concerned about is that the paint color matches itself. So so we can fix anything like that, any little line that's on there. There is a tiny little line there. I'm not sure if you guys can see it right there, but it's not bad at all. And we can, like I said, I don't want to try to do that now because the paint's still soft, and there's a tiny little bit of overspray right there, and we'll just go ahead and fix that with the masking across that, and I'll hit it with some of this green. So you may have to, you know, touch it up here and there, but overall this is a good sound method for doing this. It's working out really good. We'll take and you know, you're going to get a little bit of overspray like dust on it too, and you can see that that all just goes away when you wipe it. It's not stuck on the paint or anything like that. Spray at low pressure and you won't have any problems. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and mask off all the rest of this stuff. I still got some really complex shapes I've got to do on these inside ones too, which I'm going to have to take a closer look at on the box art before I do that. But I'll get this whole section here done, and then we'll come back and show you how it turns out here at the end, guys. About an hour for me and a couple seconds for you. I'll be right back, everyone. Alright, everybody, back with you again to show you that we've got this all done now. It came out really good. I had to go back and touch up a few spots like I talked about, just overlapping the color again with the color that was underneath of where I oversprayed, just to clean up all the lines and everything worked out great. So I've got probably about 2.5 hours in this as far as just hand masking, so that's not bad at all. And used about 3/4 of a roll of masking tape just on this bottom area here. I probably could have saved a little bit more if I would have, you know, reused it more, but I just started getting, you know, in a groove and just started going along and just pulling new tape and putting it down every time, and got it all done. I've got the decal applied here too. That's been setting for about an hour, and then I've already sprayed over this with a coat of semi-gloss clear, a couple coats to seal everything in. Here's a look at the box art again to show you the comparison. And I think we're pretty close here. The colors look pretty good to me. So we're just about done with this bottom area. There's one more thing that I'm going to do, and that's to tie it all into the front, because I've weathered everything on the ship from here up to this bottom part. You can see I've already got some weathering on the front and on the sides here, and so we got to tie all this in. And you can see in these pictures here on this box is what they're showing you is that you've got the weathered version there, and you've got the freshly painted version here, and you can see the freshly painted version, just like mine, it looks pretty stark. You know, it looks really kind of really busy going on down there, and we want to subdue that a little bit, but we want to retain all of our nice painted lines and everything. So I'm going to weather this a little bit with this Tamiya Panaline accent color. This is more or less kind of an ink, and it's what I've been using to weather everything up to this point so far, either partly by brush or partly by spraying it on, because you can spray this stuff on. It's super thin, and it's great for spraying out of an airbrush, and it dries really fast, so we can cover big areas. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I've got my gun set up, my little airbrush set up to spray some of this stuff on the bottom. We're going to basically make a few streaks here and there, and then we're going to kind of highlight around this logo here, so we can make that look a little bit more worn in and not so fresh and brand new looking. That's kind of the goal of this whole thing. So I'll set the camera on a tripod, and we'll come back and I'll show you a shot of us laying down the Tamiya weathering technique on this. Be right back. Okay, everybody, back with you once more, and just showing you how it's going here with laying down a little bit of weathering on it now. I basically loaded a little bit of this Tamiya panel accent color in my airbrush. I started off with this dark brown here. I didn't want to go with actual black because I didn't want it to start looking too smudged and too undertoned. And I just lightly went around and just darkened some stuff up. I darkened up around the Klingon logo in the little recessed areas here, put a few streaks on it, kind of highlighted around some of the little raised details and stuff like that. I've got the nacelles sitting on here temporarily because I wanted to kind of start weathering them at the same time. And so I've pretty much completed doing the work with the brown. So now I've switched over to this gray, which is the same type of, you know, weathering ink. And this is gonna bring this down a little bit more. I'm gonna go really light with this stuff, but I just basically want to spray it on here and let it wash some of these colors out. And I think it's gonna get it a little bit more looking like it did in the movie, where it had that sort of whitewash look all over it. I don't want to go quite that extreme though. I just want to do a little bit of it here and there, and just to kind of change it up a little bit. So I'm going to show you how this works. This stuff is super thin, and it sprays really nice. You know, if you're not careful with it, since it is really thin, it can splatter just a little bit when you first spray it out. So if you want to get a nice even spray, I recommend kind of clearing the airbrush out a little bit before you start actually spraying on the model. Give it a couple of bursts and then actually start the stream before you kind of come right up to it. So I'm just going to put a little, you know, a couple of little streaks on it here and there. And what this is going to do is it's going to just kind of tone these colors down some. And you can barely see it going on here, guys. I mean, it's not showing up super bright, and it's just putting a little washed out look a little bit on some of these colors. Like I said, I'm going to highlight some of these panels, put a few streaks on it here and there, a little bit around the leading edges. Same thing I did with the black, or I mean the dark brown. And you might be able to see a little bit of difference showing up there on that red part of that Klingon logo. It's just making that the front edge of it look a little washed off, like it's worn, blending it in with that darker color. And I'm hoping to just kind of bring the tone of this thing. I'm going all the way up, a little bit on this forward bulkhead, a few little streaks on the bottom of the bulb up here on the top. Probably can't see that on camera, sorry about that. A few running down the nacelles. And I don't even know if it's going to show up on camera for you guys here in this lower lighting. Hopefully when I take some pictures of it and stuff, it will. And I'm just kind of spraying lightly at first to see how much of this is showing up. If I want a little bit more, I can go a little heavier on the trigger, which I'm starting to do now because this stuff isn't really showing up that much, but it is toning it down overall, and that's basically what I was shooting for here. Okay. And I didn't want it to be too brown or too black. So there you go. That's all I'm going to do, guys. I'm not going to go crazy on it. Give this a little quick dry. And it's showing up in person for me really good here. I can see little highlights here and there of the gray, and especially around the logo there, that made that look quite a bit better. Or the symbol, I keep calling it a logo. I think I'll do a little bit of, there's this kind of neat looking detail right here on the neck. I think I'll just highlight that tiny little bit there. Yeah, that brought that right out. See that? Okay, so that wraps everything up here, guys, for the lower half of my paint job here. I'll probably take this little line accenter and I might go around some of the little greelies and stuff on this and just pop them a little bit, you know, with the brush applicator here, and that'll help it pop out just a little bit more. Some of those individual little pieces on there. There's a couple little pieces, a little framework detail that goes on here, and a whole bunch of stuff that goes around the neck area here. We want to weather all that in as we go too. But that's basically how she's going to look, guys. I'm not going quite as severe on the weathering as the studio model. And like I said, going back to all the discussion about the paintwork on that, it's really hard to tell, you know, and you can kind of put your own balance on that, because in the beginning shots you can see it's more sort of clean looking, and then towards the end it's you can tell some of the shots were taken later where it's a lot more dirtied up and everything. It's hard to say because they dust powder on it, they do all kinds of stuff to, you know, hide glare and, you know, stuff like that on camera. So, but you're kind of wide open if you just kind of get yourself in the ballpark with your colors, and then go from there to paint it to like I said, the way you think it looks good to you. That's what's most important. So we're going to wrap this video up then, guys. Next video, which will be part 5, will be coming back, and I'll start to work on the top half. I'll probably just go ahead and paint that whole thing, so that you guys have already seen that. You can use the same exact process when we paint that. And then we've got to work out getting that mounted down onto the top and seal the whole thing up. I already went ahead and cut the battery box out of it, that little square part in the middle, because I want that area open, because I've got my control board and all my other stuff in there. I'm actually getting another board for this from Tenon Controls, which is a remote board to tie into this, so I don't have to have any buttons on my base or anything. And we'll wire that into the existing board that's inside the model, and that way everything on this will operate with a push button on a remote control. That'll be really nice. So we'll be back again with part 5 and show you more of the build, guys. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and I hope this encourages you guys out there who have this kit, who have been maybe a little put off on the paint job. And this particular method here, it's not the only way to do it out there, but it's an easy way to do it. And if you take your time, like I said, you can get a result just like this. So I hope you'll pick your model up and start working on it. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Take care, and happy modeling, everyone.